Hey, welcome to Feedback for the week of January 24th, 2012. Thank you for bearing with the cloning process. It took about a week for us to remake me after what happened in Thailand. But I am back, and I am, I guess, as good as ever, which is probably not going to be that appealing to most of you. But I am back. I figured because you probably aren't happy to see me back that I would invite three of our favorite panelists here today because everybody loves the three of you, Jessica, Nicole, Leah. Thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate it. And I wanted to get right into the first topic, and I really like this in the meetings we had before we did the show. We were kind of trying to decide who we wanted on this particular panel, and I love this particular dynamic because there's two. We're a little older, unfortunately, and two of the younger guard is with us today. And the very first conversation we're having is about difficulty in games. And games were a little bit different, I think, when Jessica and I were growing up than they are today. But there are still a lot of changes occurring, I guess. And so, before we get into this irrational game story, Nicole, I wanted to ask you guys, what is the most difficult game you've ever played?
Why are you looking? I'm not Nicole.
Because Nicole's going to do the story.
Oh, okay.
That's called
Did you misunderstand it?
It was a little weird.
Yeah.
It's
called
so pretty.
It's called foreshadowing.
It's the long hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is. You're right.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm not marrying you. I'm marrying you. It's so easy to confuse the two, except never.
Awkward.
So Nicole, we'll start with you.
Okay.
What's the most difficult game you've ever played?
I'm gonna have to go with Ninja Gaiden 2. Absolutely incredibly difficult game.
Mm-hmm.
I somehow managed to get up to level 9, and through stages 1 through 8 are feudal Japan, kind of this sci-fi Japan, and then all of a sudden, level 9, you're on a aircraft carrier flying in the sky. And it's just like, why? Why am I a ninja on an aircraft carrier? And
I think the real question is why not?
Well, what it takes so long? And so I upgraded my claws. And so basically I can only do up-close combat. And, that doesn't do much against cannons. So somehow I got past that stage only to find level 10 be like a rehash of every boss I had fought was now in this level.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a game that hates you. Ninja Gaiden.
But it also gave you the ability to pretend that you were Wolverine on a shield helicarrier.
Wearing, the tightest leather spandex ever. Ryu, it's good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fan.
All right, good
Yeah.
to know. And why was that game, outside of the fact that, I guess story-wise, it made absolutely no sense at the end of the game, but why was that game difficult to you? What made that the most difficult game you've played?
I think it was just, enemies had so much HP, so that was one.
Mm-hmm.
And bosses were so bizarre, and you always had to find their weak point, and it wasn't like in some Japanese games, they have a glowing red orb in the middle. Oh, I hit that. A lot of the bosses didn't have that obvious weakness, and I think it was just the variety of weapons on top of the fact that I had to specialize in one weapon, which was these.
You fought with jazz hands?
Yeah. Well, dance.
You fought with a
Yeah.
freeze frame of jazz hands?
Yeah, that was it.
All right, so I'm keeping track of the reasons that the games were difficult because of this irrational story.
Also, I suck.
Oh, that's not true. Don't say that.
Well, it was a tough game.
Okay, all right. Jessica, what about you? Your most difficult game, and why was it so difficult?
I have a couple. I've got Super Mario Brothers 2 was difficult, in my opinion. Often because, however, although I did finish it, it was one of those games where once you died, they'd put you right back for the very start of that particular level. So you could, you really had to memorize. You had to go through and try and guess and touch and figure it out and memorize the way that you were actually going through the level in order to make sure that you didn't die so that you could move on to the next one. And then you did the same thing over. And that was fine. I really liked the game. I felt really accomplished when I finished it, but it definitely was one of the more harder ones at that age level because that was a while back.
And because it required memorization is what you're saying,
not just
the foundation of the
necessarily
difficulty.
It wasn't, you were...
Well, anytime there's no checkpoints, I feel like the difficulty goes up.
It was it was not so much the memorization. That was easy to figure out. It was just having the trial and error of doing it and realizing that there were no real checkpoints and that you just have to keep on just throwing yourself at that particular level until you eventually, hopefully, reached the end and moved on to the next one. And then you went through it again, and then you went through it again. So on a scale of difficulty in regards to being able to figure out the game, that wasn't it. It was just the way that the game was structured that made it a little bit more tough.
Okay.
And then Battletoads, same thing. That one.
I hear nothing but awful things about that game.
Yeah.
Never personally
same.
played it.
I've got extra reasons why I dislike it because, and I think we've had this discussion before, I don't like anthropomorphic animals.
Just doesn't like them.
So the whole Battletoads thing really thought it was disgusting and hated
Right.
it.
Sure.
So that's a personal issue though.
Naturally, yeah.
It is very much so.
Yeah.
Would be classified as a personal issue.
That's definitely
Less
a
a
personal
difficulty
issue.
or a game design flaw, and more of a you just don't like animals that
Just a
can
little,
talk.
just a little crazy.
Sure, sure.
But yeah, I mean, it was this kind of the same thing with Super Mario Brothers 2. With Battletoads, it was one of those, you got to go and test all the waters. Except for this one, there was this one particular scene where I think you're on it's been a long time, like a water jet or a water
No, dude.
ski.
It's the hover bike level.
Was it the hover bike?
It's the worst level in the history of gaming.
And
By far.
I never got past that.
Mm-hmm.
I could never do it.
Yeah. You know the key to getting past that? I poopy you not. The way that I beat that game is I remember Nintendo Power came out with an actual pull out
Map?
insert of that level and showed you where all the obstacles were. And I had to tape that up next to my television and literally just play on the map.
Well, no, so here's the thing, though. Because it went so fast, I mean, I got far enough that I knew where the obstacles were. My problem was timing.
Yeah, that's
I
why
could
you
never-
you just had to get this cadence in your brain and not even pay attention to the game.
And that's a good example of what I was saying before about the memorization. Like, you had to just throw yourself into these levels and try and push as far as possible before you died. But 9 times out of 10, a lot of those games didn't have checkpoints or restarts
Right.
at any given position. You had to go from the very beginning. So, and then if you lost from that point, you had maybe 3 restarts from the beginning of that particular level before you had to restart the entire game.
Very
So you're
punishing.
just like, oh my God.
Yeah. So lack of checkpoints, the restart, all
Yeah.
those things. Battletoads is also widely considered to be one of them. That particular level, like maybe the hardest level of all time. But Super Mario 2 is an interesting choice, and you don't hear that as often as you hear things like Battletoads. So that's a good choice.
It wasn't unbeatable. I mean, I managed. It just took a really long time.
Interesting. Leah, what about you?
Mine kind of goes along the same line of Super Mario 2. Mine was Super Mario The Lost Levels.
8-4, dude.
It's just that was the hardest game that I've ever beat, and I didn't beat it until I was in college, and all my roommates they're like, oh, we found a Super Nintendo, let's go play this game. So I got stuck playing it basically, and I just remember having like 8 of my like guy roommates around me watching me like beat the end, like Bowser in the final part of that game, and I was just so proud of myself. And it's all about memorization, because like in a normal Mario game, you're like, oh, I jump over this pit of doom, but in that game, if you jump, there's a box there that like is invisible and you just die. And like it's so unforgiving and so mercilessly hard. But once you figure out like the tune and what you're doing, it gets a lot more fun, and you feel accomplished once you beat it. So I think that's a type of game that they don't make anymore. And then the other hardest game that I've ever played is StarCraft 2, just because the meta game is always growing in StarCraft 2, so everyone's always thinking of new ways to beat you, and it doesn't stop. So it's not like a normal game where there's a certain strategy that always works to get past that. Like in Mario, like there's a stupid box there, you're gonna go around it.
Right.
In StarCraft, there's 18 ways that someone can go around that box and kill you. So I just feel like StarCraft 2 still is the hardest game to
Because the learning curve is
master.
ever expanding.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. There's no way to get to like the very top. There's always someone that's going to beat you the next time.
That's
Right.
like me in every single multiplayer first-person shooter ever.
Yeah, it's just like that's why
Forget it.
No matter
multiplayer
how
games
good
are
you
just
get.
harder
Right.
in
Somebody
general.
else.
Right. It's
So-
interesting choices, really, guys. And fun. I don't know how I remember this, but I remember the Lost Levels when they eventually were released here in the
Yeah.
States. I remember reading a story that Nintendo initially blocked the North American release of that game
Yeah,
because
'cause
they
it
were
was
afraid
too
they were going to
hard.
polarize their fan base
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they were like, nobody will buy Nintendo games
Yeah.
ever again if we release this
I
game.
read that too, and I was like, they're smart on them, because I've never thrown my controller that many
Frustration.
times. And another time that I threw my controller, I just will always remember this, is when I was playing Final Fantasy X, and you had to get Lulu's ultimate weapon, and you had to dodge the lightning 200 times. And I tell this story all the time.
Actually 200 times?
Like actually 200 times in a row, can't fight monsters. Like, and I got to 189 and it took hours and I got hit and I launched my controller like at a glass door. Like my mom ran downstairs. She's like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I'm like, "Don't talk to me right now." Like it's more frustrating than difficult, but I feel like they go hand in hand a lot of the time. Like game developers think making something frustrating is making it fun because people think it's harder, but that's not the case a lot of the time.
Right. That's interesting that you say that because Nicole has a story about Irrational Games where they did this interesting survey. Before we get into quickly, I just wanted to bring up that I was thinking about this last night. What's the hardest game I've ever played? And Battletoads is obviously like a pretty easy answer, but I was thinking about the fact that if you don't use the Contra code, Contra may be the most difficult game of all time, at least from a co-op standpoint, because I don't know if you guys played Contra with your friends, you probably didn't, but there's a waterfall level in this game where the screen scrolls as you jump up through this waterfall, and if the bottom of the screen catches up to you, you automatically die. If you don't have the Konami code that gives you 30 lives, you only have 3 lives to beat that entire game.
Yeah.
Which in and of itself is just extraordinarily difficult, damn near impossible. But when you're playing with a friend, if he jumps one level higher than you and he doesn't wait for you, you die, and now you only have 2 lives left. And that is a moment where I thought, God, I don't know if I'm ever going to be good at video games if all games are like this.
In Donkey Kong Country 2, there's the elevator level, like towards the end, where it's kind of similar. Like you have to keep jumping up and up and up and fighting guys along the way. And if the elevator catches up to you, you die. And there's tons of levels like that in Donkey Kong Country 2. But I actually wrote that game down also as a really hard game. Like, do you remember the Vine levels in Donkey Kong Country 2 with the barrels?
Yeah.
That was so hard. And especially for like a little kid, like it's a very simple concept, but those games were pretty hard.
Absolutely.
So I don't know.
Well, look what a great person you are today because of it.
It's true.
So
those barrels.
Okay, maybe we should reevaluate that particular statement you just made, Nicole. All right, let's talk about what Irrational has going on, and really the whole reason we've had this discussion so far today.
So back in December, Irrational Games surveyed a bunch of their fans and asked them what they wanted from BioShock Infinite. Infinite obviously being the game that everyone is just super, super into, despite the fact that we don't know that much about it.
Right.
We've basically seen the same footage and like variations of that over and over. But so they've announced a new gameplay mode that's called 1999 mode, which is basically the equivalent of legendary mode or veteran or insane. But unlike those modes, it won't just be incredibly difficult and then you have to unlock it by beating the current most difficult. The way you unlock it is by entering the Konami code into the start screen. So you have to be kind of inside in the gaming community already to know to even unlock this. So, but if you do, so this this gameplay mode is incredibly difficult. So enemies are stronger. There are less choices. There are save points will be difficult. They haven't announced how, but they will be more difficult to access. And so basically, if an enemy is anywhere within a certain radius of you, you can't save. And so maybe he's around the corner and you don't see him. Too bad.
Sure.
Like you can't save. So all your choices really matter. There are, instead of gene tonics like in BioShock 1, there's these, it starts with an N. I think they're called Nostros.
Something like that.
Yeah, because and I remember reading and thinking of Nostradamus. I was like, that sounds like Nostradamus. So instead of, whereas gene tonics, you had a whole bunch of them and you could swap them out at any point, like, ice and bees. You basically only have, there's much fewer, and once you assign one to a slot, you have that forever.
Yeah.
So it basically, this mode forces you to pick a specialization. You have to level up a certain weapon, a certain tonic, and you have to stick to that. And every choice you make matters. And it's basically just an incredibly punishing experience, which is, I guess, what people wanted.
Yeah, I mean, that's the important thing to point out is that all of these particular game design choices were born from the survey that they said, hey, fans, what do you want? What do you need us to do to make this game, knowing what this game is probably going to be? What do you need from us to make this game as difficult as games were in the 90s?
Right,
basically?
and not just the 90s. I thought it was weird that they chose 1999, and that's the year System Shock 2 came out. So this is all just like one big...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at us. We do cool things.
So this whole mode is kind of like an ode to System Shock 2, and then gamers who appreciate that kind of gameplay.
Right. And
a
like
great-
you said, what we've all covered here is basically they're including all the things that we
hate.
chose but that made these games so difficult.
Yeah.
And memorable too.
And memorable. And Ken, there was a great quote that I think, Nicole, you brought up yesterday in the meeting before this, where he said something along the lines of just because a game is difficult doesn't mean it can't be fun, or something to that effect, correct? What did he say exactly?
Well, I don't remember what he said exactly. This is really awkward.
Nicole had a really great quote yesterday, and I wish we had footage of that quote.
Remember how great that quote was?
Yeah.
Let's reflect on it.
But essentially, Ken said something to the effect of, listen, games like Demon's Souls and Dark Souls, outside of the sense of accomplishment that you get from beating these actual games, they actually are entertaining games if you look at them on a fundamental level. Like, these are things that can be fun, and we don't necessarily want to punish you guys to the point where the only thing you get from this is a sense of accomplishment. We still want to enjoy yourselves, and that's why they released this survey, because they wanted to offer that kind of experience, but in a way that fans would find to be accessible.
So are you going to play 1999 mode when it comes out?
I myself, and we've had this conversation about just what difficulty mode you play in general. I play a game like BioShock for the story, and in order for me to experience the full story, I need to beat the whole game. And so I'm probably going to play this on a normal level, at least initially, because I want to experience everything the game has to offer. Jessica and I were talking about Demon's Souls and Dark Souls the other day, and I've beaten both of those games. And the story in those games aren't necessarily all that great. For me, it truly was just seeing if I can get through them. That is not the kind of experience I want to have with a BioShock game, especially not the game that Ken Levine and his team are now making and are
That's
back
why
making.
I think it's so interesting that they're making this decision, because they put so much effort on explaining why Columbia is so great and putting all this effort into the story, and now they're
Voice
like
acting and animation.
Yeah, and they've just put so much behind it, and now it seems like they're going in another direction just to add this gameplay mode. And I don't really get it.
It's totally voluntary though. Like, you have to know about the code to even enter it, to access this incredible difficulty. So I think it's it's just fan service.
Right.
Yeah,
And
it's
I mean,
a great option. I like the fact that it is an option, and it's been a well thought out option. It's not just something that it seems to be tagged on. The one thing that really stood out to me is that the choices that you make actually hold some weight within the game, as rather than just being kind of like, oh well, dinky dinky dink, and eventually I'll go ahead and
And that's
get
an
into
interesting
this.
thing to say, coming from a team like Levine's team, and that as well, because look, I've talked to Ken a number of times about BioShock 1 and BioShock 2, and he's made no bones about the fact that he was not involved in 2, and he's not the biggest fan of 2. I think this is a way for them to not only make the game that they felt should have maybe been the follow-up to the first BioShock, but it's a way for them to say they want to try to please as many fans as possible, because they feel bad that, and this is just me speculating, but I don't want to say the brand is tainted, because BioShock is still an amazing brand.
And
but
BioShock 2 wasn't a
bad game. It just
It was
wasn't.
okay.
It wasn't up to the same standard that BioShock 1 was, obviously. But it's interesting that like these, that this particular line is like the decisions you make will have real consequences. But in the first BioShock, the decisions you made had some pretty real consequences. So
I just
that's
don't,
such an interesting differentiation. I think.
don't know,
Maybe it was less choices.
I think it's weird, because I think a lot of games already like force you to make a decision that you're going to have to live with through the rest of the game. So, and they're touting this as like, oh, it's a super serious decision, and if you choose to spec pistols, then you're going to have good pistols but not a good rifle or whatever. And it's like, but that's how every game is. Like, if you level up your pistol, then your other guns aren't going to be as good.
Maybe
And
this is just a ploy for the media to cover it, and oh my god, it works.
Well, I was going to
It's
say
the very first thing Jessica said yesterday.
Fantastic marketing scheme.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic marketing scheme. And hey, if it's an option, it's one I support. I don't see why they shouldn't do this if they want to.
I think it's cool to have more options in the game. Also, I just don't think that this is the coolest thing I've
only
ever heard.
thing from the marketing standpoint that kind of ruffles my feathers a little bit is how they're toting it as kind of an us versus them mentality. Like, this is for the hardcore gamers.
Yeah,
And this is for
exactly.
the good ones. These are for the good gamers out
Yeah.
there. And if you don't, and we don't want to have this right automatically up as an option on the load screen, because
like
we don't
Dr.
want the
Pepper.
bad people stumbling onto it. And it's like, well, when are the not hardcore gamers going to eventually try something that might lead them
The
into
whole
being a
thing
hardcore gamer if
reminds
you're
me of-
trying to keep them
Of
exclusive?
Dr. Pepper for men. That whole marketing campaign, like
Exactly.
Well,
that's what
a
it
whole other
reminds me of.
That's a terrible marketing campaign, by the way.
And
but
I don't know how I made that like correlation,
I
but
don't
that's
either, but I wanna
exactly
hear it.
what it reminds
Yeah.
me of.
I love
And
that.
so
I think
women
that's what it
shouldn't
makes
play
me
this
mad.
mode. Is that what I'm extrapolating here?
Yeah, I think
and
that's
this
like
mode
the
has
kind of
fewer
thing that
calories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the option. I just don't necessarily like the
How they're selling it.
twist of the marketing on how they're selling
Well,
it.
frankly, we don't know how they're marketing it yet, right? This is
Well,
just information that we've gotten from.
This is me reading an interview with him.
Right.
We
I mean,
also
this
have
is-
a really
Made.
long interview with him on G4TV.com if you want to check out more on 1999 mode.
I like that. I like that quite a bit. And, you know, I do like the fact that although it is a Konami code and, like, that is, I guess, could be considered insider, like AOL's homepage had a Konami code sheet a couple years ago. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, Konami code's not really that insider anymore. This
When
is
it's
pretty
on T-shirts
accessible.
that you can buy from Threadless.
Yeah, this is pretty
gives it away.
accessible. I'd be interested to see, like you said, I want to see how they market this because this comes from an interview from Ken Levine.
Mm-hmm.
Cliff Bleszinski's done a lot of interviews where I'm sure Microsoft marketing said that is not how we want to portray Gears of War. Like what a creative director says and the way a game is marketed are two very different things. I think Ken is an uber nerd, and Ken goes, I just want to make my game as cool as possible for as many people as possible. And if people that love Demon Souls need that kind of challenge in a BioShock game, we're going to give it to them. And that's
Totally
what I
fine.
think the direction probably was. But either way, like Leah said, the more options, the better in games, right? I mean, this is
Agreed.
tacking on a bunch of extra difficulty modes is super cool. I love the fact that they polled fans.
Yeah.
And they said, this is what the fans want. And I think that's pretty cool. But that's
I mean,
just
I
me.
personally wasn't polled, but I believe them.
You know, it's nice to see that they're going out there and reaching out to the fan base and,
Sure.
and really taking what they're saying to heart rather than just kind of glossing over
Especially
it and doing
since the
whatever they
last
want.
thing they need is like approval from gamers right now.
Sure.
Like, they could do nothing wrong at this point.
Yeah. This game
except for delay the game, which I don't know.
Even
Well,
though I'd wait for it.
They haven't even set a release date yet. But
They
speaking of
promised
delayed
2012.
games,
Yeah.
Oh my God, segue.
Nice transition.
nice.
It's like you guys planned that. You're like, when I get done with my story, how do you want me to lead into your
We sit
story?
right next to each
Why don't we
other.
just
We
do delayed
totally
games?
come on, how did you know?
But speaking of one of the, I don't want to call it a delayed game, just a game that's been in development because you can't delay something you've never announced the release date for. But this game's been worked
pretty-
on for
pretty damn
quite
close.
some time now.
It's been in development for almost half as long as I've been alive. So that's a good. So that's one
Oh
way to
my
put it.
God.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just been in development that long.
Jesus.
All right. So
I'm gonna drink so much Metamucil later to make myself feel better.
You guys look great.
So basically what we're talking about is Diablo 3 has seen some major changes. Game director Jay Wilson went to the Blizz blog to inform gamers about a massive amount of very important changes that they're making to Diablo 3. So they're changing the entire crafting system. They're removing items, attributes. They're changing how the inventory system works. They're changing the skill and rune systems. They're completely removing scrolls of identification from the game, which is kind of like a staple in Diablo. So that's
100%.
kind of a big deal. And then they're adding things. They're removing a artisan. They're removing the Cauldron of Jordan and Nephilim Cube, which were like big things that they announced that were going to be in the game in the first place. And they're just doing so many things like right after they had this very short beta test that it made me wonder, like, why are you making so many trivial changes at this late in the game when you announced that the game could be out quarter 1? It's definitely not going to be out quarter
Sure.
1 now. And do these things really, did they really need to be taken out? And how come you didn't have the people internally testing them for the last however many years
12.
to
12
to make
years.
sure that you do need to take these things out? Like, what's going on over
And
there?
are these as trivial as I feel like they are?
I don't know. For me, like crafting items, that doesn't seem very trivial.
I mean,
Well-
we're making
Well,
changes.
they're making
they
changes.
said making
They're not-
changes. They haven't said which ones. I think
Oh, I
that
see.
you said it yourself that it was the demo was a beta, the beta was a demo. I mean, we live in a world now where
Yeah.
those two things can be
Yeah.
hand in hand. But I think this is probably in response to user experience more than an internal Blizzard discussion.
But I
think.
just feel like that would be such a weird. The beta.
Mm-hmm.
There were no problems with it. It was short, and you could probably beat it in like an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't really show you what everything the game could have, but there was nothing wrong with it. There weren't any major glitches that could have
and there
this kind of
wasn't
feedback.
anything there wasn't anything within that beta or demo or whatever we're going to call it at this point that would make me think like, oh yeah, you need to remove these things that you've probably been working on for years. And one of my major points that I really wanted to make was that Star Wars: The Old Republic took forever to come out, and it's out now, and it's it's good. But the only thing that is really revolutionary about Star Wars is the story, and everyone loves the story and harps on about how good the story is
pretty
and
good.
how
Yeah.
you know, and how that's
BioWare
really
definitely did it
the
right.
only different thing from that MMO and every other MMO is the story. So, and everything else is kind of recycled. So, is this going to happen with Diablo 3? Like, should they have waited to announce Diablo 3 in the first place by the time that they kind of had everything on lockdown, sort of like what Valve may or may not be doing with Half-Life 3? Like, I don't understand what they're doing
Do you
at
think-
Blizzard.
I gotta be honest, I just don't even pay attention because Blizzard will always take their time no matter what anyway and come out with the game when they're ready to come out with it. So these news items, I kind of just put on blinders and I'm like, I'll see it when I see it because that's kind of Blizzard.
It's Blizzard, but it's at the same time, it's like I'm such a diehard Blizzard fan. Like, I'm definitely the biggest, like, cheerleader that they have here. And at this point, even I'm like, are you kidding me? Like,
Well, you have to wonder if these reasons are the actual reasons it's being delayed.
Sure.
And is there something under the surface that obviously they're not going to tell us? And I am just, I don't know, I like to speculate because it's kind of something I'm good at. Maybe they're delaying the game so they can launch it with a console
Right.
release.
No, I
think
agree
that they're-
100%. I mean, we're talking about things like removing the 5th quick slot button and adding
Making
a
it
potion
for a
button
potion- yeah, it's
instead. I think, look, we've talked to Jay Wilson every year for 10
Yeah.
years now about this game, whatever. I mean, Jay Wilson was a fan of Diablo that is now in a position where he's leading this particular
he
game.
even
He's
said
always
that-
said, like, he wants it to be perfect, like, from a fan perspective, not
perfect
a, not
doesn't
a,
exist.
But-
exactly,
and-
but and that may be part of the reason why these things continue to happen, why this game continues to push, because maybe they are searching for this perfection that they will never find.
Yeah, but you
he
can make
said
a
that
game that's
no,
as close
no
to
one
perfect
will
as
remember if the game is late, only if it's great.
Exactly.
I
And
agree.
I agree with him, but at the same time, you can't just keep leading people with this carrot. Like, you have to give them something more
See,
substantial.
I
While
gotta disagree
I-
because Blizzard always does this. So fans of Blizzard
But
should
this is
come
a
to
really long
expect
No,
it.
I
And
mean, this is-
shareholders.
you also have to remember that this is 2012. People are releasing like DLC packs every like 3 months now at this point. Like, they can't just
Yeah, if you don't
make
have a day
people
one
wait
patch,
for
you're
10 years
missing
at a
something.
time now. Like,
I can't
the
change my
industry has
mind
evolved.
because my constant gripe across the board with any game, whether PC or console, is how it seems like a lot of people are putting out broken games with the hopes that they can patch it and people will just deal with it. And here's a company that sticks by their word and says, we're not going to give you a broken game. We're going to give you the best game we can possibly make. And if that means I've got to wait 5 or 10 years for it, that's what I'm doing.
But see, I don't
But
know
it's
if
not
that's what they're
broken.
doing, and I also think that they're
find it's
taking
they think
away
it's
things so
broken.
that they can have more stuff for expansion packs and to put in the console version.
That's
and,
interesting. Because
and
why would they
to
take
add
away
DLC?
the scrolls?
Yeah,
Yeah.
these are very odd.
They're-
I don't want to call them cosmetic changes, but these aren't fundamental game design changes.
Like, there are a few fundamental game design changes, but a lot of them aren't. Just like you said, so it just doesn't make sense, and it's really frustrating as someone who wants to see this game and wants it to succeed. But I don't understand what are they going to do for the next year or so to bring it to that perfection level that
right.
I don't know.
And again, I mean, while on I
Sorry,
guess.
just
No, you're obviously very upset about it. But again, I mean, we're looking at major change. They've said major changes are being made to core character attributes like strength, dexterity, and crafting items. But they haven't actually said what those changes are. So,
Yeah.
like, they could be talking about just rejiggering the math. On because we don't know, and none of us know what exactly they're doing to under the hood to
well, they
to
said
do
that
this.
like they're completely overhauling the skill and rune system, and that they'll explain the big changes at a later time. And this post where he went over these few things was like pages long of just Diablo
This is like
blabber.
whatever the projected release date was. This is pushing it back 6 months.
like
Yeah.
at least. So I don't know. It's just frustrating, and I would love to hear from them. You know why they're making all these changes.
and they'll never say it, and that's
Yeah,
because that's just
exactly.
what they do. And
I just hope it's a great game, but I want to play it sooner
When-
than later.
This is not super off topic, but when does Myths of Pandaria come out?
Probably the end of this year.
Because I doubt they'd want those two products competing with each other.
And there's a StarCraft 2 expansion that's probably going to come out this year also. So who
Sorry, guys.
who knows?
Not looking good.
Yeah.
And speaking of games that push a lot of titles at the same time.
Oh my god! It's like
You did it.
Thank you.
Good job.
We're all so excited.
There seems to be a lot of this going on right now. Two examples we've got here are Silent Hill and Resident Evil. Silent Hill, which breaks my heart.
Let it out. Let it out.
Yeah. So I
But
was
being honest, has it been? Is it just now breaking your heart? Because
no,
it
it's
should have been breaking your heart
been
for the past
disappointing me
5.
for quite a while. I was a huge Silent Hill fan up until 4. Finished 4, as in like 1 through 3 were fantastic. 4 was
Less.
okay. Maybe not even okay.
How many are there?
Oh God, I don't know.
1,000.
We're like up to gazillions now. But
Because they're not numbering them anymore.
no, they
So-
don't. No, now they've all got.
How am I supposed to keep track?
extensive titles? But
It's easier to
Konami-
not qualify failure if you don't.
Yeah, so
put numbers on
Konami's
it.
got Silent Hill Downpour, Silent Hill Book of Memories, PS Vita, and then Silent Hill HD Collection, which is going to, I think, encompass 2 and 3. Are they including 4 in that?
No.
No, they're
No,
not.
just 2 and 3.
Just the
Which-
good ones.
Exactly. So, but they're all roughly within just like a few weeks of
Like
each other being
back-to-back
released.
weeks,
I mean,
yeah.
it's literally back to back. And I mean, I kind of understand the PS Vita release because here's
It's a
a new
launch.
system
Yeah.
and it's a
Yeah.
launch, and I get it. I don't necessarily agree with maybe the style that they're doing, this over the top kind of multiplayer that also now allows you to have superpowers.
I'm so sorry.
Oh my god. But I get why they're doing it. However, like Silent Hill Downpour and Silent Hill HD Collection, I don't really understand that one necessarily, with the exception of possibly they're hoping that the super duper diehard fans that are out there that are still holding on are going to be the ones that buy the HD Collection and Downpour roughly around the same time. So they're trying to kind of jump in on that nostalgia train, but then
It's a recession, though. so.
that's the flip side. Is
Nostalgia
that
chain,
the
choo-choo,
yeah,
but-
the flip side is the recession, and these games aren't cheap. And so to come out with 2 titles like that are
And-
roughly around the same cost bracket.
HD Collection was delayed. It was originally supposed to come out, I think, to maybe this week. And so they, within the past 2 weeks, pushed it to March. So, like, this was a very calculated move to
mean-
make this all in the same month.
I'm going to jump out there and say if you're a person that only has enough money for one title and
Which is
you
a
are
normal
Silent,
person.
yeah, and you're a Silent Hill or Silent Hill fan, I would say go for the HD collection before you go for Downpour, because Silent Hill 2 is one of the best games I've ever played.
Well,
Right.
it's good.
Yeah.
Good to know.
I
mean-
think that
And this is Resident Evil too. Resident Evil's doing the same thing.
yeah, Resident Evil is doing the same thing, and I think that I personally don't play horror games. I am too scared. I'm a baby. But but let's say like 3 Final Fantasy games or 3 Harvest Moon games or 3 Pokemon games came out within 1 month of each other, I would totally go buy all of those. And I think that if there's a demand for those games from that fan base, then the developers can supply it, then they're going to. So.
I just don't know how strong that fan base is currently.
And I
Just
also
because
feel
the
like,
games after 4 have been so bad.
but if
Right.
you remember, like last November when the 4 like huge big games came out, like back to back to back, like Uncharted and Skyrim, then like they all came out, and everyone still bought all of them, even though we're in a recession. Like, so I just don't know if it's such a terrible idea for you to get your Silent Hill fix for the year all at one time.
I mean, I think we probably should look at the Silent Hill stuff and the Resident Evil stuff as 2 different things, because Silent Hill's offering a brand new gameplay experience and then an up-resed version of 2 fan favorites. So
And
that's
then
something completely,
a
and then
PS
and then
Vita.
a, then a
then the
brand new
PS Vita,
console.
yeah.
I do think that there is a market for all 3 of these. I'm not a Silent Hill fan, but
3 weeks.
there is a market, I think, for, because you could have the old school fans, you can have maybe somebody looking for a new experience, and then a new console. Like people, there's markets there. I think the Resident Evil stuff is a little more like, why is this actually happening?
I actually like the concept of Operation Raccoon City, where you're now playing as one of the Umbrella Corps.
yeah.
Yeah,
And you
because we
go
can
in-
finally play through all the massive amounts of fan fiction that have been written online about that Nicole
By
has
Nicole.
written. By
I'm so sorry, you guys.
Well, it's the flip side, and you're doing other things other than just, killing the zombies or the infected. You're actually going in and trying to cover the tracks of what,
Killing people.
Umbrella's done and things of that
I don't
which
know.
we don't
nature.
condone here on
Well,
feedback,
so
by the way, killing people.
Just to catch the viewers up to, Revelations for the 3DS is set for March or February. Operation Raccoon City is set for March,
Mm-hmm.
and then the just announced Resident Evil 6 is set for November. So, if you're a Resident Evil fan, two of those are going to be console $60 games.
Right. I mean, look, I think that again, it's the same thing as Silent Hill. I think there's a market for all of these things. I really do. I mean, there's a reason that both of these franchises, there's still enough money being made by them for game companies to commit entire teams and salaries to continuing to put out these games.
I totally agree with you, and I feel like if there's a market, then they should supply it. If there's a demand for it, they should supply it. And it might be silly, but by this time and for it's Silent Hill anyways, like I have my fix. Now I can move on to the next thing that I want to move on. And that's just like my kind of personality. Like I'm obsessive, like, oh, it's Silent Hill month. So I can play Silent Hill like all month and then go on to the next thing and then not have to worry about it for a while. So, but Resident Evil is a bit different because they're coming out with so many in a year, and it could have just probably been standalone DLC, but whatever.
Well, I do like the fact, though, that what they're trying, they are at least offering different gameplay experiences.
Right.
And people, especially I think the reaction, at least around the offices when the trailer for 6 came out, was like, 3 different protagonists. It means 3 different gameplay. Who likes to change gameplay? But things like that are always going to piss off fans until fans like it, and then it becomes the norm again, right?
Everyone loves it because it's the internet.
Yeah, I mean, but what we're looking at though is maybe like I like what Resident Evil is trying to do, and for the last couple, like not moving and shooting is a terrible idea to me. However,
especially when zombies are around,
especially if zombies, but if it would have worked, that would have changed. Like they're trying to change the experience that people have become familiar with over the last decade or so, and I can appreciate them doing that. I may not agree with their choices, but
they need to pull the fans.
They do. Maybe they need to offer a 1999 mode. One of the additions would probably be not moving and shooting, because that makes really hard. But I do like what they're trying to do here, and like you said, I mean, there's a reason I cover movies for this network as well, and every time Resident Evil movie comes out, I know we have to cover it. You know why? Because it's going to win that week in the box office. No matter, and those movies aren't good.
They're so bad.
But there are fans there that will watch these movies.
I'll go out and watch them just out of curiosity at this point.
They have good effects.
If they're on TNT, I'll watch, because they always for every bad word, they do a voiceover where it's like peas and carrots, like something they totally did not say. TNT, they know drama, guys.
Well done, Nicole.
Yeah.
Well done.
Other people branding.
But the Silent Hill stuff, and I will say I'm not that familiar with the franchise. So Jess, this is an actual legitimate question, but I was always under the impression that Silent Hill is more about this kind of cerebral, like survival horror experience. So you don't necessarily need to change game mechanics that much, as long as you always have the tone and the mood are always consistent throughout the games. Are they trying to change things in this franchise? Like in the previous iterations, maybe even the most recent ones, like are they trying to evolve the franchise, or are they literally just, like Leah said, churning out games because people will buy them?
I think it might be a combination of those two things. I think it's churning it out because people will buy them. You know, there are still really passionate Silent Hill fans, and even though I feel that the focus has become more on the action aspect of it and not necessarily the horror aspect of it, you know, that world is still there that you can run around in, and it's still somewhat gratifying. But I also think that they see the forest for the trees. They've heard the response and the feedback, you know, and
They watched our show?
They did all the
Oh,
time.
I get it. I'm like, what? Yes,
I'm
that's
sorry.
funny.
Really.
And that you know, they're probably trying to find a way to pump some new aspects or fun or something into the game that'll grab people the way that like 2 and 3 did.
And what made 2 and 3 so special? And again, this is an actual legitimate question.
I mean, this is for me. It's like this is totally a personal response. I really enjoy horror games, and so the fear aspect of it was what I was involved in and why I enjoyed it, because I got that kind of. I was afraid to turn corners. I was afraid to look into rooms. And it wasn't necessarily because I wanted to battle the monsters. I was just trying to find out what the heck is going on in this town and why, like, what is the story? What's going on? What screwed up, crazy stuff am I going to see?
So there was like a sense of discovery in the game.
Sense of discovery, sense of mystery, sense of just the vibe overall. I mean, obviously you are battling monsters, so that is there, but that wasn't the primary focus on the game, as I feel that it is now. You're like constantly running away from Pyramid Head, and you're constantly battling these big nurses, and it's just like that's another thing I'd like to see go away is the big nurses. I'm kind of over it.
God, I'm going to disagree
really
with you
over it.
categorically
Yeah,
on
of
that one.
course.
I say more big nurses.
No, they've got plenty. Oh God, believe me, that those need to go.
And these will be the big that will be in high definition.
I mean, I'd like
is
to
what you're
see.
saying,
I'd like to
'cause
see one nurse that has the body of a supermodel in real life, because that just does not happen.
Yeah.
And
And
they're
with
all
a
over the
mummified
place.
face. I mean,
I
you
just
don't see it.
need to get to a computer. I'll show you. lot of hospitals nowadays have hidden cameras apparently, and I found a lot of websites that have found this footage. Just saying, you just need to dig a little deeper. Well, let me ask you a question then, and before we move on to the fan feedback, because I know we're running out of time here. But what would make Silent Hill better? What do you think they need to do to make Silent Hill a better franchise? And then for you guys,
Puppies?
Mm-hmm.
Puppies.
I
That's my
think
vote.
they really
zombies?
need to kind of. I would like to see them go back to the horror genre mode where it was a little bit less battle and a little bit more exploration and a little bit more of what is this town about? Why is Silent Hill happening in these different areas of the United States? Because it's like Silent Hill is not just like Silent Hill. It's never been a dedicated town per se. Like if you go and read the history on it, it's always like this alternative universe that,
sure.
it just kind of pops up in people's subconscious, and it's all about discovering what is wrong with you as the main character in this story. And I'd like to see a little bit more of that. And I'd really like to see maybe, and I don't know how they're going to do this, because even at this point, the title's been going on for so long that the world itself has become a little bit mundane. You're not as scared of it anymore because you've come to expect what happens. They'll have to figure something else out with that too.
Okay, so make it scarier,
Make it more
introspective, more
make
cerebral.
it more introspective and
Okay.
more cerebral.
All right. Probably not going to happen, but you know what?
I know.
It's
I
a
know
good,
it won't.
it's a
Our
good
dog
direction.
suggestions probably more
I do
likely.
like cute dogs.
But there'd be zombie
too.
dogs. but
Zombie
they'd be your
dogs.
friends.
Like
It'd
on
be
your team,
AI.
like Fable?
Yeah.
Like a Fable dog?
Yeah, but zombie.
Okay, I
I'm
like
just
that.
saying any game that adds a dog.
I will buy.
All right. Also, libraries can be scary places. So big booby librarians.
Yeah, with glasses.
Frank, high five
That's
over
another
the
thing.
camera.
They need new stages. I mean, it's always kind of the same stage.
Oh, it's so foggy in here.
Oh,
Yeah.
so this hill is
Oh,
so
this
silent.
light is
Ugh.
red.
All right, let's move on to some fan feedback. Jessica, what do you
Say.
got?
Game Wizard says BioShock 1 and 2 gave us a city under the sea. BioShock Infinite will give us a city in the sky. Is it inevitable that BioShock eventually will be in space one day?
Totally, you guys, right?
Well, I mean,
Let's just speculate away. Let's just
How
name
about
every
a
environment.
Django?
Yeah.
Like, what?
who owns the IP? Because if 2K could make Bioshock 2, or who made Bioshock 2?
That was not irrational. That's
Yeah, it wasn't irrational.
2K Marin, I think.
Yeah,
made
so if
Bioshock 2.
they can make a game without Levine's input and consent, then yes, Bioshock 3 will be in space.
I suppose the possibility is always there.
I mean, it's this game, this series has so much hype. It's a guaranteed success.
Sure.
It's going to make so much money. There will be more. There will
Right.
be more whether Ken Levine likes it or not.
Yeah. I mean, look, the game could be like, I mean, it could be argued that the game is about colonizing previously uninhabitable parts of the world, right? I mean, we were
Sure.
talking about the air now and then under the sea. So space could be, yeah, I mean, definitely. But I think it could also go. I mean, this question's open ended, right? It could go to a jungle if you want,
like-
the the
That's
pyramids.
Cool. Oh, pyramids, cool. But you need it to be, I guess, land is so boring.
My whole thing was that I really wanted to play a BioShock game where it's in the sky and it's like Castles in the Sky, that anime movie, and that's exactly what this one is. So I'm super happy and don't care what they do next because they're pleasing me with this one.
All right, you didn't answer that question at all, but that's
Nope.
that's good.
Space.
Yeah, so I think we'd all agree space is definitely not an unreasonable expectation. All right, what about Matt likes chili?
Matt likes chili.
What
He
else
likes
does Matt
chili,
like?
too.
Matt, I'm never coming over to your house ever. How important do you feel the role of creative director is to a gaming project? Example, Ken Levine for BioShock Infinite or Hideo Kojima for Metal Gear Solid. If they weren't in charge of the next game in the series, would it affect your decision to buy it?
It's a great question.
I would say anytime a creative director who has done stuff that I've come to know and love was pulled off of a project or chose to leave the project, I would probably still buy the game, but I would be hesitant.
That happened to Last Guardian.
That's what I was just
That's
going
what I
to
was
use as
just about
my
to say, too.
example.
I'm so sorry.
I'll probably, so there's our example, Last Guardian, Oeda out. And so I definitely want to still pick up Last Guardian because it's Last Guardian.
Because you've been waiting
and
8
I've been
years
waiting
for
with,
it.
Yeah, and I love the stories up to that point, and but now I'm a little nervous. Now that I'm a little nervous that he's out, and so for me, Last Guardian, with him gone, if it doesn't live up to my expectations, which are really high right now, I would probably not continue to follow the series if he wasn't involved after this.
I feel like that even if the creative director leaves a game, that the people who are working on the game still really care about the integrity of the project. So even if a creative director leaves or isn't a part of it, the people working on it still have a lot to live up to, especially in a game like Last Guardian. Like, they're not just going to say, "Oh, now it's not a fun dragon
I don't
anymore."
think
Like,
it's them
you
that's
know?
going to be the problem. I think it's potentially whoever they have to now get their
Who approves
direction
their ideas.
from
Right.
Well,
and who approves their
I
ideas.
think-
They might want to do it one way and follow his way.
I mean, I have a few examples of when the original developer left a project or changed from one person to another. Like for Ocarina of Time on 3DS, it wasn't Nintendo, it was Grezzo. But that game came out great. I mean,
a port.
it
Yeah,
was a
that's
port, but it still came out, you know, really well. So, and then another one was Devil May Cry. It started out as Capcom, and now it's moved on to Ninja Theory. And you know, people are questioning if Ninja Theory is going to do a good job or not. But it looks like it's going to be a fun game at least. So it just has to depend. I feel like not only on the creative director, but there's so many other people who are working
Sure.
on the game.
Yeah,
that
but those are
Yeah,
just-
my big
those are
concern
just
is always
guesstimates,
if the team leaves. If you take the game from Irrational and then give it to 2K, that's when major changes can occur. But on a creative director level, and I know that every company is different, but like Leah said, as long as the team that was below that person is still making the game, like if Wade Beckett, the executive producer of X-Play, were to leave X-Play tomorrow, X-Play would continue on the way that it's supposed to
Now, here's
continue on.
something
Like
to
what
think
needs
about,
to what needs to happen is they need to have somebody else in place that also believes in the vision of the team, and that's Christopher Nolan on the Batman franchise is a great example where you need somebody who has enough cachet to be able to fight the battles for the team with the people that are actually writing the paychecks,
Right.
but they don't necessarily make they're not the end all be all in the creative of the game. The reason that Ken is such a big deal is because Ken also wrote BioShock. And when you're also writing the story and then you leave, then
Right.
that's a
Right.
big gap you have to fill.
Well, one thing to consider, though, is why is this creative director either being asked to leave or leaving on his own? Is it because he's having disagreements with
usually
upper
money.
management in regards
It's usually
to...
always 100% money.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's literally, it's all about money, expectation, I think. And but
all those things that can thus affect what you end up with as a finished title.
But with Modern Warfare, you saw Infinity Ward, you saw the
I
heads
have
leave.
that one down here.
Yeah.
And then you saw a good portion of the team leave, and then you saw a solid game anyway.
yeah, look, if there's,
But that's
and,
a pretty formulaic game.
and I don't want to negate anything that a creative director does because their role, I know, to my understanding, and the creative directors that I know are very important, but every single one of them will say, I am only as good as the team that I have assembled. And if their
exactly.
team remains behind, then I think you have less to
But-
worry about than if Cliff goes and says, I'm going to take Rod Ferguson with me, I'm going to take all these people with me, then you maybe worry about what
Right.
gears are going to be next, because if Microsoft is controlling that IP from there on out, then you might have a problem.
Right.
But if
But
everybody
with,
from Epic stays behind, then it's a different story.
What about not Hideo, but Shigeru Miyamoto leaving Nintendo, but not taking a role with the next Zelda game?
But you know what he
Like,
said? I mean, his very first statement was, the reason that I'm comfortable doing this is because these are people that I've worked with
Yeah, that
for
was the-
15 years,
that was
and
the
they
big-
understand my vision.
And he wants to train them to be able to work with him without him there with his still creative eye working on things. So he believes that those people will be able to uphold the integrity of the products that he's created. And that's basically the whole circle back to what we started talking about with this. And
Well, and that's why, that's my statement. Like, we're going to wait. I'm going to see what Last Guardian is like. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to play it.
You
but
think
if it's
gonna
not
come
any
out
good,
Still? That's really
It's coming out. It's definitely coming
It's
out.
not coming out.
We have faith in that.
I said,
Don't say that, Nicole.
I said when I said years and years ago that I'm not going to buy a PS3 till Last Guardian comes out, and I think last year I bought a PS3 finally because I just couldn't
Give up.
wait anymore.
because
So
you're broke. You're like, no, I can't.
And now
do it.
they're going to watch the show and go, now we have to put this game out because we cannot let that little girl be lying to herself.
Well, I was waiting for like some big news to happen like the day after, and the price drop did happen on the PS3 the day after I bought it.
So you kept the receipt and returned it
no.
immediately,
Yeah,
right?
she
Okay,
did.
good for you. Good for you. All right, and Jess, what about Scrapped Heap?
All right, so Scrapped Heap, making 1999 mode in Bioshock Infinite unlockable with the Konami code would be awesome. What is your fondest memory of using the code or just your favorite cheat in a game? Mine was unlockable characters, and I don't remember how I did this, but I did. I think I probably looked it up somehow. But unlockable characters in Marvel vs. Capcom on the Dreamcast. That was my favorite.
All right.
Oh, and God mode on Doom.
See, what,
Because there was no way I was going to get past that otherwise. I was trying to sneak play in that game too because my mom's like, "What's all this devil stuff that you're playing in this game?" And I'm like, "What? I don't know what you're talking
Sweet Jesus, you did sound like your mom just now.
about." I did, right?
Whoa.
Jessica.
Oh, don't. Taking these off. Those are two very interesting. I think that the guy and girl responses are going to be very different here. Like for me, it was like
you on big mode.
big.
Is that a mode?
It must be in some
You
game.
know him so
Feed
well.
the fire. I remember like any unlockable character in NBA Jam. As soon as I found out what the initials were to unlock them, I was like, "This is amazing." And then I forget
Weren't
what
there
the other
some
one.
crazy ones in like Blitz? Like there are always crazy cheats in Blitz.
Yeah,
that you
Midway
could, like,
always
unlock.
put out some good stuff, you know. But I
You could
remember
unlock,
unlocking
like,
Big
Mortal
Head
Kombat.
Bill Clinton in NBA Jam, and I was like, "This is the dude." Like,
And then they kept that for the Wii version.
yeah. I mean, the Midway has always had some great unlockables. And
Nicole's favorite's hot coffee.
then
Yeah, no, it's. I have it on YouTube favorite, and I just watch it.
all day, every day,
So-
especially at work.
Yeah.
When I'm drinking my coffee.
Sorry.
It's got to be cold
what-
coffee
what
at this
is
point,
it?
right?
It is cold coffee.
You can't be serious.
I think I've heard of it, but I
What is this?
tell me.
Well, it all starts.
Well, first
when
of
a
all,
mommy
is it
GTA
statutory if we tell her?
No,
how-
no, she's-
Okay. Then by all
12.
means, go ahead.
She's over 18.
You don't know what the hot coffee mod is from
Is that
Grand
when
Theft
you
Auto?
have sex with a whore?
I mean, yeah.
Oh, that was adorable.
I play things.
I love how you
I hope
started
that-
over that word.
I hope that one day you are witness to a crime and you get brought into court and you're like, well, officer, I saw the men sexually assault her vagina in the alleyway. And
I saw a hot coffee assault happen. No, it's.
wow,
Yeah.
this makes me feel so old.
I
that
mean,
don't-
you know, you probably. I don't imagine you as a GTA player, so
Mm-hmm.
you just didn't follow the
Look
GTA
at my shirt. It
news.
has a cute little kitten on
Sure.
it. I mean,
Are
come
there
on.
any kittens in GTA?
yeah, I think I'm pretty sure you can beat him.
Oh, okay.
Like that's I hate to be the one.
Obviously, in hot coffee, there's a
Oh,
GTA.
I see you did there.
circle.
And then what about do you guys? We can't afford edits, you guys, so we're just gonna have to keep that in. And do you guys remember? You probably. I mean, for me, it was an actual like
Yeah,
wow
I
moment.
never typed in the Konami code to a game.
I always did Konami code obviously for Contra, but I remember discovering the freaking warp zones in Mario. And I was like, oh
yeah.
my god, this is a game
I
changer,
know,
dude!
what is
I don't have to go 1 through 4,
Or-
2 through 4.
What's a whistle do?
This is amazing.
or the one where you actually could jump on the very top and run
Yeah.
across and then find. Is
Yeah,
that the one you're talking
that's-
about?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, those were like, I mean, I remember that
changers.
going, what? Like you think you miss jump
was
off that
that-
rising platform, you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna hit the ceiling and then fall, and then you're like, wait, I'm still going.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, what is
Or in
this?
Super Mario World, in the ghost level where you can go up top and then get all the extra
Yeah.
lives at the end of the ghost. Yeah,
I also
like
liked finding the hidden coin,
Yeah.
coin blocks, and I would sit there and literally destroy levels, one level at
Yeah.
a time, just trying to find that one block that was like ding 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 ding
Yeah.
ding, and that was great.
I didn't play that much Mario. I'm gonna be honest.
What about you? She doesn't know anything about. I mean, she didn't even know about virtual sex.
No,
she obviously doesn't know how to cheat on anything.
I'm aware of the virtual sex.
Yes,
Quite
yes.
familiar. But I didn't cheat that much in games until I bought a Game Shark.
Oh,
and then I
then you're
didn't
the ultimate cheater.
And then I didn't really need to try to cheat. It just kind of like it just happened all the time.
Right.
Always 100 stars, 100 coins, 100 everything. So
God, that really did.
Yeah.
It became less about cheating and more about how creative Game Shark Shark could break a game.
Why don't we have
Creatively
Game Shark anymore?
Well, we were. I was actually talking to Donnell Tucker about this yesterday, and we were like,
Oh, I'm sure this is going to get sexual.
Games,
for sure.
Well, no, but it's more like there's not cheats in games anymore. Now they're just like exploits or Easter eggs, but you can't like cheat in video games anymore. They make them so that you can't. So now instead of like you find something really cool and then the developers are like, oh yeah, it's an Easter egg. Like
Right.
we meant to do that. Like,
Yeah.
you know?
Or if it's a PC game, you can literally change the game on a fundamental. Like, I'll
Yeah.
just mod it completely.
Oh, I love those
and
Skyrim
put any.
mods.
The My Little
that's-
Pony
That's
one.
what.
Yeah,
well,
the My
I
Little
was gonna
Pony
say
one's
like
did you see the Final Fantasy one?
no.
That this guy actually made a character that looks perfectly like Lightning.
I did see that.
He's a genius. You should
It-
just
it
see
looked
all
just
his
like
stuff.
Lightning.
It's perfect.
I
He's
did see that.
unbelievable, and it actually hurts me that I have the console version instead of a PC version because I'd love to try out those
I actually
mods.
just wrote a PC mods post for
man.
G4TV.com.
It's a Skyrim guide
It's a
for all the
Skyrim
PC
guide.
mods.
Yeah,
That's good to
that's right. But I was gonna say that I don't really use cheats either, but I do use a ton of exploits. So like my favorite ones were always in like Warcraft 3 or StarCraft when you would type in like all your base are belong to us, and then you just get instant win and go to the next level. But my favorite was when you type in who's your daddy, and then you get invincibility and you get one shot kills, so you could just kill everything and see the story still. So I like doing that and then telling my friend, yeah, beat it. But recently, my most recent one was Skyrim. Just straight up God moded that entire game, and it basically
And that's
ruined.
why she didn't like
It
it.
basically
Right.
ruined my entire Skyrim experience, and I wouldn't suggest anyone doing it. But I think I was like level 2 and just like God moded the entire game and beat it in like one night. And
See, I think that's a very good point. That the cheats for me, the cheats now would probably ruin the feeling of the game.
totally ruined
I
my Skyrim
prefer
experience.
Easter eggs. I like to find Easter eggs.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily ever want to use cheats again.
Right on. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here and being such excellent contributors as always. Before we go, though, again, as always, anything that people can look forward to seeing you do or anything that you've done that you want people to take a look at?
Oh, we've got some X-Play stuff coming up that I got to cover over at CES. I think we've got BioWare, some of the...
Pretty sure that's airing right now, actually.
is it airing
yeah,
right
I think
now?
today, tomorrow,
Oh, okay.
Thursday. Yeah.
well, catch
yeah.
the rerun.
Watch X-Play,
and-
you guys.
Watch it right now.
Yeah.
So that, actually a lot of the games that I got some hands on at CES.
Yeah,
I
all the
would
video
say
game stuff at CES
check
you
that
actually covered
out.
for
Yeah,
X-Play.
Wii U, BioWare, and wait, what was the third one?
Vita, you saw, and refrigerators, if I recall correctly.
No, that's the CES stuff, the actual on the show floor. But we did a separate package for X-Play that was all the video game stuff that they
Yeah.
had there. I
Take
can't
a
remember
look.
what the third one was, but definitely take a look
Right
because it
on.
was really cool.
Nicole?
You can read all of the video game reviews, previews, features, and news at g4tv.com/the feed.
yeah, feed writers.
Yeah,
Wow.
That's what we do all day.
Wow.
We sit next to each other and
High five
Yeah.
each
high
other?
five each other all day long.
You guys
It's
can't
fun.
reach with your tiny little Tyrannosaurus
It's
arms.
more like a freeze frame.
Air five. No.
Nice. Can't afford a freeze frame and edit either, so that's just going to look really weird.
Also on G4TV.com, I'm gonna have an esports column coming up in the next week. So I'd love everyone to check it out, and it's gonna be a look at 2012 esports and my expectations of what's gonna happen this year.
All right, great.
can't wait.
And as usual, thank you guys so much for watching new episodes every single week at g4tv.com/feedback. For me, I'm going to go get all up inside the Donnell zone.